Welcome to the Howie and Beastmode podcast, where we discuss all things business, including growth, strategy, and execution, as well as personal and professional development. Let's join Howie and Beastmode in conversation.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining the Gateway Business Group, where we focus on business growth, strategy, and execution. I'm joined by my co-leader, Jordan Allsup. Hey man.
Hey guys, it's great to be with you. We got a really exciting topic. It's actually so exciting that we culminated too much information, so we're gonna have to break it up into probably 2 sessions at least. But we are podcasting on it to where we're able to dive deep a little bit further. So please go check that out. But we can jump right into the topic.
Cool. I think I will. Does it mess anybody up if I share my screen?
We just can't see your face.
Can't see my face anymore? Okay.
Oh,
I think I'm gonna. You still can? It's probably just depending on your layout.
You're
okay.
Good.
Okay. I think I'm gonna do that, and I know I'm giving away all of our notes here, but that's okay. So the top. Zoom in. Okay. Better. Oh, you mean zoom in so where they can't see it?
Yeah.
I mean, ideally it would be in PowerPoint, and we can just control, eyeballs. But I guess we can, unpack it because it's not like the bullets give away absolutely everything.
Sure.
But the title is Meaningful Metrics, and it's growth and business protection at the same time. And so there are some scriptures. So Jordan's going to share 2 of them. I'm going to share one of them. But in, this one actually bit me last week in my own personal job. Not having metrics actually got me in trouble last week. So metrics can, it is, like I said, it's not just all hunky-dory. It's not just business growth. It is also business protection at the same time. I may or may not share with you guys that story, by the way. I'll think about it. But let me read for, you're like, no, now you have to tell me. Because it's like, now it's built up too much. All right, here is the, so my scripture is, be diligent to know the state of your flocks and attend to your herds, for riches are not forever, nor does a crown endure to all generations. So your flocks, obviously, and this is a, looking back, this is a type and a shadow of business, of course, because flocks is what they would relate to, in great part as a shepherding culture. So be diligent to know the state of your flocks and attend to your herds, for riches are not forever, nor does a crown endure to all generations. When the hay is removed and the tender grass shows itself, and the herbs of the mountains are gathered in, the lambs will provide your clothing, and the goats the price of a field. You shall have enough goat's milk for your food, for the food of your household, and the nourishment of your maidservants. So it kind of goes into a beautiful description of shepherding and the impact of the shepherding to the personal income and the family and the workers of this particular shepherding business. But it talks about a couple of things in this that I like to unpack from this passage. The first one is that, the upside. And so the upside of this passage from a tracking your metrics standpoint in business is that, you'll have the ability to have clothing, and you'll be able to have, monetary income, as well as, resources. So these are all the aspects of sort of like self-sustainability for the business to sustain itself, and for the family to be sustained as well. And then the downside is that, riches are not forever, and a crown doesn't endure to all generations. So if we don't track our metrics, that's the protection aspect of needing to track metrics, that if we don't track them, it can bite us. And like I said, I had a story just last week where I wasn't tracking a certain metric and it bit me. Survived, but it did. So Jordan, I'm going to go to one of yours, which is Luke 14. And what verse did you want me to start in? I can't remember.
25, 26.
Okay.
You'll see the heading change right there.
Okay, cool. So I'll start kind of here for you.
Yeah. So 25 to 28 just kind of gives you the background. And so Jesus is talking about the cost of discipleship, but then he equates it to a business. He says, when you follow me as a disciple, you must put aside your father, your mother, your wife, your sister, your brothers. Yes, you will even seem as though you hate your own life. This is the price you will pay to be considered one of my followers. And he comes into it. And anyone who comes to me must be willing to share my cross and experience it as his own and cannot be considered to be my disciple. So do not follow without considering what it will cost you. For who would construct a house before sitting down to estimate the cost to complete it? Otherwise, he may lay the foundation and not be able to finish. The neighbors will ridicule him, saying, "Look at him. He started to build but couldn't complete it." If you go to 31, scroll down a little bit, Brian. Have you ever heard of a commander who goes to war without first sitting down with strategic planning to determine the strength of his army to win the war against a strong opponent? If he knows he doesn't stand a chance of winning the war, the wise commander will send out a delegate to ask for terms of peace. Likewise, unless you surrender, etc. We know the end of that. But what he's equating is he's telling you you need to do your due diligence up front. You need to run some metrics. Do I have enough money to build my house? Do I have enough armies to even go to war? I should know that. But then on the back end is maybe I'm looking to grow my business a certain type of way. Okay, well, I need to look to see if I even have do I have the staff to do so? Do I have the time, dedication to pick up a side hustle to grow my business in this certain way? If I don't, then I don't need to go down that way. I don't need to commit myself just like Christ is asking us to commit to him. We just shouldn't commit to a business halfway, because then we're going to end up looking foolish.
And psychologically, I'm wrestling with my next one right now. Just to let you guys know, I'm praying about it, thinking about it, spending doing some thought work on it, doing a little bit of research already on it as well. And so for me, I'm wrestling with that pre-commitment because I want to be able to commit myself wholeheartedly, and I want it to be something that I can do, something that's profitable, something that I have a passion for, and something that's feasible when you have a full-time job. And there's a lot of factors that I'm having to kind of factor in. And then I'm trying to like look forward in time and saying, where does this go? Kind of thing. Like where could it go? So there's a lot of consideration to do. So there's a lot of this sizing and a lot of the metrics that I need to still work on in my personal situation for sure. So this verse is perfect for me, to be honest.
Yeah.
Your next one is good as well.
Yeah, it's really brief, and I've done a little bit of commentary work on it while we've been chatting. Ecclesiastes 7:18. It is good to grasp the one and not let go of the other. And whoever fears God will avoid the extremes. But if you go look at 16 and 17, that's what it's talking about. And so it's telling you, do not be over righteous, but don't be over wicked. And so it basically it's talking about don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't be so over righteous. Again, we're being a little faith-based, but don't be so over righteous that you're a Pharisee and you're missing the fact that I need data, that I need to look at some of these numbers, that I need to crunch it, that I'm not just walking out, just pretend like I have it. But don't be overly wicked and get stuck and thinking, that I can't do it, that I shouldn't do it. Like don't be on one side or the other. Be in the middle, and then ultimately the resounding answer is you're fearing God. You're constantly bringing it to God. And so with these situations, with new ventures, with new data, with new clients, all of it is just a consistent. I'm taking it back to Him. I'm getting advice from Him. I think we talk about it all the time, just inviting Him in. Got it. I'm looking to bring on new clients. I invite you in. I'm looking to expand. I invite you in.
Mm-hmm. It's good. All right. Well, why don't we let you guys, Dennis and Dustin, kind of talk about what's on your heart in regard to these items so far. Any topic is okay.
We can give them some examples off the metrics that we're going to go down, Brian.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, the first one that we talked about covering tonight would be growth. So this would be growth in a business. So these are all meaningful metrics and things to consider. So for example, finding growth is the first thing that we want to cover. In probably 2 weeks from now, we'll probably cover finding risk and finding savings. We might bundle these. We'll see how it goes. We have to build these out. And they're all going to be, each one of these will be a podcast actually too, by the way. But anyway, what I think you want to know, so Dennis, you've had to do this kind of due diligence before from a sales growth standpoint. Dustin, you may have as well. But where are we most successful in terms of customer type, right? So what's our vertical, for example? And we can get from that some from closed sales data would be one example of that. So Dustin, have you had any opportunity where you had to do kind of study some data and pull some metrics out for any particular reason?
No, not currently. I'm not. We actually have like a team that pulls that data. So essentially, what on my end we just process information. So we have people that do the analytics. Of course, having said that, this may be something later on that ends up being something that I may need to do with that other opportunity. So that's actually got me really interested about
Good.
what that data is and what because obviously it's more like it's a service / sales position, so I'd be more involved in that procedure. So as of right now, no, I don't have any hands-on with that right now. But
we've talked about some metrics though that you can and should be tracking on your end. During Shabbat, we've talked about that.
Yeah, like certain calls. Yeah, I could definitely.
Duration, quantity.
Yeah, we've actually we're switching to a new phone system tomorrow. That's going to do all the analytics. They're going to start keeping track of a lot more than they used to. So that's something that's in the works right now.
Dennis, I know when you're working with startups or turnarounds, obviously understanding who's our best customer, what's our best customer profile. I'm sure that's kind of one of the things that needs to be considered if you're trying to do a turnaround or if you're doing a startup, but understanding what are the most successful customer types.
Among other things, yes. I would say kind of the biggest struggle for most of the businesses I've seen, whether they're startups or they're like a 40-year-old companies, is people are trying to collect and analyze numbers for the sake of collecting and analyzing numbers. And kind of the greatest example is the dairy that is now closing, but in its heyday. When I just joined the dairy, the narrative was, oh, well, okay, so we have a lot of, how do they say that? They say like, we have a lot of data, but we have little analytics. So they were basically accumulating kind of gigabytes of data, like all different kind of data and kind of all the data capturing devices. And they say, well, okay, so the only thing we really need is now to put this data together and start making some decisions based on this data. It turns out about 3 months into kind of my time with the company is that they were not collecting data, they were collecting numbers. Like by saying numbers, it's really something that doesn't matter. They collected like gigabytes of stuff that you cannot even analyze because it's looking at something that's not capable of bringing any kind of managerial decisions. So we had to take a step back and ask the first question before we ever get to data, like what's really important about the business? Like what will make this business succeed? And after finding what makes this business succeed, we had to figure out is, well, okay, how do we measure that? What specific kind of metrics and checkpoints and benchmarks are behind it? And only then we figured out kind of a collection mechanism. And only doing it this way brought us somewhere. It like, well, when the business started accumulating the data, that actually matters, because between that, I mean, I cannot tell you how many databases they had, and you can spend days and days with this database, and like, and so what? You just get a lot of graphs, and that's pretty much it. I mean, you cannot make the company by looking at this gigabytes of data. So for me, the biggest kind of eye-opening experience working with the data is don't just accumulate the data and analyze it. Decide what's important, then figure out how you're going to measure it, and only after that start kind of accumulating and analyzing. Otherwise, it's going to be mostly wasted time.
Right, that's what we're talking about, Dennis, is that, you know, you can obviously overdo any type of data in any capacity, but sometimes it's so from your perspective, they had tons of data but had no idea how to analyze it, you know. But then there's the other perspective is I don't have any data, but so where do I start? And so that's what we're talking about is to look at a type of data of where we should really start.
Right. I agree. What I was trying to say is that they had tons of data, and kind of on top of this data, they had these graphs and they had dashboards, and they had all this kind of different kind of stuff, and it created really like a very false perception that they were a data-driven company. But they were not a data-driven company. They were just a company with a huge pile of numbers that are good for nothing, and then a whole of dashboards which are good for nothing as well. I mean, so in terms of kind of getting into the data, if you start with no data, this is a really good starting point, because this is the point where you can kind of step back, decide what's important, and go from it. But a lot of companies, they are in this self-deceiving mode that they are driven by data, and they had all these graphs and dashboards and databases and reports flying around. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't support your decision making, it's just a whole bunch of numbers.
Wow, it's good.
So what's a key data point that you look for whenever you started looking at all this data, for example?
Well, we started looking at what makes a cow profitable. So we basically said that the entire farm is nothing else than 6,000 money-making machines. And the first thing you have to figure out is what differentiates a money-making machine from a money-losing machine, and how you look at the cow from the real perspective of how much money it makes today, and what's its potential to make money 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now. What kind of risks you have, and whether it's worth kind of keeping this particular cow, or is better to replace it.
By replace it, do you mean eat it?
Well, yes.
Sorry, I couldn't help.
All the dairies, they are in this constant cycle of having their producing cows, and then they're raising their replacements. And gotcha. So in terms of replacements, you have kind of your own natural selection process. So you may start with like 150 per month, but then from your production herd, you decide that you're gonna cull, which is kind of a polite way to say send them to the slaughter plant, only 80. So in this particular case, you will only take 80 from your replacement herd and kind of replace 80. But kind of statistically speaking, it might be a good idea to actually replace 120 or 60 or whatever. I mean, there are a lot of decisions being constantly made. And in our particular case, it was just going down to basics, and then figuring out, looking at every individual cow as a money-making machine, how you make specific decision tree. So at what point of time the cow becomes kind of not a great candidate to still stay at the dairy and should rather be replaced than let continue milking it. So it's a fairly complex model because cows, they are natural creatures, and that's why there is a lot of kind of uncertainties related to them. But at the end of the day, the entire dairy is about making profit, and the only way to make profit is to make sure that every individual unit on the farm brings you as much money as possible.
Are the cows? Would you equate them to your customer, and what or how would you equate what the terminology for them in a
No,
normal?
they're your machines.
Okay.
So like in the chemicals companies that I worked for, there's going to be kilns and furnaces. Obviously, in kind of the bag manufacturing, that were printers and kind of sealing machines. And but in typical manufacturing plant, you would only have like 25 machines, maybe 30. Obviously, on the farm, you have to assume that you have 6,000 machines, which I mean, they're not identical, but they operate in using an identical model. Let's put it this way. They have obviously different inputs, different genetics, different life cycle, different kind of a lot of different things. But in general, that's 6,000 production machines.
Okay. Well, good.
So if I want to get more milk out of a cow, then I need to be looking for information about what makes my most successful cows.
Well, you want to get at least money. So, what food are you feeding it, and how much volume? Right, Dennis?
Yes. Well, with cows, I mean, I can steal this whole section. The biggest problem is that the cow, as opposed to the machine, is not making the same amount of money every single day.
Come on.
The cow the cow is most productive about 3 months after calving. So it goes kind of in cycles. So it's most productive after the calving, and then it kind of goes downhill over the next, let's say, 6 to 9 months. But their plan is to kind of impregnate this cow again, and you're constantly resetting the cycle. So the cow kind of starts with a lower milk production when it calves, then it rises up, it reaches its peak production at 6 months, at 3 months, and then it sort of goes down. And the plan with the farmer is that you want to reset this cow, then it calves again, it sort of goes up, and then slowly it goes down, you impregnate it again, and just the cycle continues. The tricky part comes is, what if you cannot impregnate a cow? Like, do you want to keep it or you don't want to keep it? And that's where genetics start kicking in. So if you really have a genetically superior cow, then you may say, oh, well, okay, we can't impregnate it, let's not even bother. But as long as the cow gives us over like 50 pounds of milk, let's keep it. And for a really productive cow to kind of slide downhill to 50 pounds of milk per day, that's going to be another 2 years. So if it's a really good cow, but you cannot impregnate it, then you wait until it reaches kind of certain threshold. For some other cows, that might not work as well. And some cows, they are not kind of genetically superior, so in a sense that their peaks are not too high, but they are very good breeders. It's very easy to kind of impregnate them. And so with them, you kind of keep them in the herd because these reset cycles happen very often. So instead of having this huge peak and then kind of a slowly going downhill, it's doing small peak and then kind of a short period of time, another small peak and then another small peak. And it's kind of a lot of analytics and statistics. It's I wish the cows would be as simple as just a typical machines, but they are not. But And at the end of the day, that's how it works.
Well, I mean, basically, you're definitely talking about growth here. You're right on target. It's a little bit of a different, it's not sales growth, it's production growth.
Yep.
But with production growth, then you have the ability to, serve the market in a predictable way. Um, and that's the business health of that particular vertical. So that was very fascinating. That was really good. And it talks about data. I mean, what's great about it is like, these are literally, four-legged animals. And yet here we are talking about there's a lot of data that can make that dairy successful if they know their data and then they make decisions based on that data. So that's really, really interesting. So I'm going to dig some more into this. So what we talked about earlier in our planning chat is that we want to know from a growth standpoint where are we most successful in terms of customer type. So in the automotive, repair coverage industry, for example, or in the safety industry, what are the most successful customers? Like, for example, Dustin may want to understand in the safety standpoint, who are the most frequent users of safety type services, right? So
Right.
we want to understand what those are. We also want to understand, we can get, so that would be one quick thing. We can get that data from closed sales data, or if it's a startup environment, you may only have lead, like who's responding to your leads. And so those are good. Now in an established firm, you would have closed sales data and leads. That's better, and you can use them both. But yeah, so that would be good. So within that, so Jordan will talk a little bit about a couple of these, and I'll talk about a couple of them. But in your leads analysis as well as in your closed sales data, these are some of the categories that we're going to talk about next as far as what types of data.
Yeah. So obviously, we looked at, closed sales or production with Dennis, but then it's really, we come down to, once we start looking at, what are we closing? How often are we closing? How many are we closing? That's kind of initial. Now, if you're a startup or you're in a new position, you may not have any of that. So the other end of that spectrum is we'll start keeping track of it. Then it's lead analysis. The first thing that me and Brian both just kind of piggybacked on is with leads or with really any of this data is assessing what we both use as our term as pain. What is the pain that I'm trying to analyze? What's the pain specifically for my leads? So as my leads are coming in, and maybe they're coming in, and Dustin, I can just kind of workshop this in my mind. But whenever a phone call comes in, and maybe they have you have your typical complaints. Well, what complaints are you best at? That every time they come in, just 100% got them covered. I know, but then what complaints am I not best at? And I know I need to work on, or maybe I need to do some research on, or you know what I'm saying? So that's just one thing. But then when it comes to sales, maybe for me in business development, maybe somebody's coming to me with a consistent need, a consistent pain, and it's just not something that I do very well. Well, why am I receiving those? Or maybe it's I'm getting, two of this type of pain, two of this type of pain. And so now on the back end, which ones do I succeed the best at fulfilling and meeting their need on the back end? Does that make sense? And then obviously for leads, it's you need Howie, do you have something?
Yeah, so from a pain standpoint, basically, what pains are your customers trying to solve? So when your leads, when you have a lead come in, or you have a closed sale, what was the pain? If you can capture that, Dennis, on your next turnaround, understanding what are the key pains that the customers are resonating with, and let's make sure that our business is aligned with enough sharpness and clarity and quality to solve those pains. Because it may be that the market's telling us something and we're not listening because we're not looking at our meaningful metrics about what the pains are. It's a big deal. I've done whole studies. I've actually done a couple studies at a couple different places. My last company, we took about, I don't even know. I mean, I have the original data, but like a few hundred, more than a couple hundred opportunities that we had worked on for customers, basically deals, potential deals, opportunities. And I had some kind of like some interns. It was basically like some new hires, basically go through all that data and basically read emails from customers. I kid you not, because we had a terrible job of capturing that. My company before I came on board did nothing to capture what the key pains were. We kind of knew culturally what the market was trying to solve, but we didn't have actual metrics on that, right? We just had anecdotal, like we thought we knew it all. Basically, is kind of the mindset. And so I had two new people go through hundreds of emails and hundreds of CRM records and basically come up with what the pains were, and we put them into like 20, maybe like a bucket of 20 top pains. And we actually know what the number one pain is in the company, and we got that from our data. So the meaningful metrics in this case for pains came from opportunity data from our CRM system. But it's better, I mean, if companies, so Dennis, when you go into your next company, or Dustin, when you start, doing your thing on safety or whatever it may be, or just future whatever, one of the things that we really have been talking about among ourselves here is, setting yourself up to where you can track this kind of stuff. So you don't have to go spend like 3 weeks and 2 people to go look at historical information and try to derive facts that you should have been tracking all along. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's that's probably more than I thought I was going to add, Jordan, to pains. But yeah. So.
Yeah, and we can all bring that. I mean, Dustin, I mean, you should be tracking it, even if I mean, you don't see it as a sale, but I mean, if you were to track some data and then take it to your superiors, say, hey, here's the volume of calls I'm getting in. This is what they're all about. We need to see you to cover this topic because we're not doing very well at those, or I'm not doing very well at those. You can own it, or even Dennis. A lot of times it's that wisdom of coming in, and they don't know what exactly they're looking for, but when you sit down, you analyze, whatever they got going on, you say, this is the exact item we need to look for. I mean, that's powerful information. It's powerful information on the front end to identify the pain, but it's powerful as you go through the process. You can remind them of the pain. It's powerful on the back end when you remind them that I alleviated that pain. And again, we're gonna be better at alleviating some pains than others, and so that's the whole point. Which pains am I getting on the front end? Which pains am I doing well at alleviating on the back end? Now I know where my skill set is and where I can learn. The next thing that we're talking about is company types, title types. So again, what size companies are coming to me? What's my audience that continues to come to me? And their leads. Sometimes I know Dennis, or Dustin, you don't have control over that in your job, but maybe it's title types. Who am I speaking with consistently that I'm winning over, that I'm addressing their pain, solving their pain, meeting their need? That's a big deal, because if I'm talking to a secretary and she's not a decision maker, then I know who to ask for. I know who I need to speak with. But as Brian and I talked about, you got to be careful. If you misidentify who the decision maker is, you can kind of lose out on the deal. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to know who your key titles are. Maybe for a dairy, it might be like a grocery chain, dairy buyer. I mean, that might make a lot of sense. For a particular cheese company, it might be someone else. There might be a school system that you want to look at the head buyer for cafeteria supply. I mean, there's knowing who the key title types are will help us to make sure that we are, getting leads that are aligned. So we can, for example, do programs against certain title types and things of that nature. Size of the company matters a lot too. So we don't waste time on companies that are too small. Or you may, one of the side hustle thing I'm thinking about right now is actually to small and mid-sized businesses. So size of the company would be, in my case, reverse. I probably would not target people above like 500 employees kind of situation. So that's kind of my current brainstorm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, so again, title type, if you can service small to medium and big businesses, well, the big business, the title who you're going to speak into is going to be a lot lower than if you're serving a small to medium business. And so that's where you just got to be cognitively aware. But again, part of this is identifying who my actual customer is. I shouldn't be trying to call, Pepsi Cola and then trying to call, Joe's water supply or whatever. They're not in the same ballpark. They're both not my clients. That's part of what we're trying to identify here. The next metric we're going to talk about is website traffic. And Howie, I'm going to toss it to you for this one.
Cool. Yeah, so website traffic analysis, there's a lot of, when we think about understanding our business as well as generating leads, one of the things that we can do is set up even free website tracking. Like Google Analytics is actually, there's a free version of that works very, very well. And that's for being free, it's actually pretty rich. And, setting up your website so that you can capitalize on web searches is a really important thing with search engine optimization. One of the things that you can do and that you should do is really have this analytics traffic analysis in place so you understand if your awareness in the marketplace, if your traffic is growing, this would be a meaningful metric. Is my website traffic growing in general, right? If your website traffic is in decline, that's maybe not a great thing as far as generating more leads for you, that your leads might stagnate or go down. If you get any leads from your website at all, and you should, then you better understand if your traffic is increasing or decreasing. Also, in terms of setting up your web page, what about using the meaningful metric of what is most interesting that they're clicking on? So if I set up my web page so that I've got my website divided by topics, then it's easier for my analytics to tell me what customers are interested in. So for example, if I have organic milk and if I have a whole page dedicated to my organic product, and then I have a value product, which is not organic, but it's natural, and it's, just a little, and then if I have like a school milk program page, if I've got a cheese industry page, and if I've got something else, if I've got 4 or 5 different products that I sell, and what I can do with that is I can have, for example, a lead form on each of those pages so that I can have a little contact us about this. And then I know that the contact us, if I have a specific one set up for each one of those topical pages, when I get a contact us from my cheese page, then I know that they're interested in that. But also from a search engine optimization standpoint, I can focus all my keywords on cheese, and I can post a lot of content out there to get more website attention or more website traffic to that particular page. And then I can also see how is my message resonating in terms of how many clicks I'm getting to that page, how long the duration is on that page. So if a little bit of website planning can help me really understand what customers are interested in, where they're spending time, and things of that nature. There's something called a bounce rate in the website world, where if they just go to your website and they don't click anywhere else, that's called a bounce. So if they just go to one page and they're there for 2 seconds or 3 seconds and they barely read it and then they click somewhere else, then you basically lost them. And so they were interested enough to come to you, but let's understand what our bounce rate is, where people didn't click anywhere else and they just spent a very brief amount of time. Let's understand that so we can improve that over time. So if you can improve the duration on your pages, right? That's a meaningful metric, right? Then they're reading about you, then you're engaging, right? If you can understand the bounce rate, which is people who don't click anywhere else, okay, if you can improve on that over time, you want your bounce rate to go down, by the way. And also, if you can improve your contact us submissions, where they're filling in their first name and their last name, their email address on the cheese page or on the organic product page or the school lunch program page, then I know that my leads are coming in. They're tagged by that particular, you know, attribution type, so I can understand over time how come I'm getting more contact me submissions from my organic page and I'm getting less from my school lunch program page. Let's dig into that and let's find out. And maybe we should have some conversations, like, or maybe we should ask one of our school lunch program, like, hey, can you hop on the phone with me? I want to show you something and get some advice about what am I saying or not saying on my school lunch program page. You guys are really happy with us. Why am my traffic seems to be down on this? So getting some feedback on that, and digging into why one of your products is not doing very well or why one of your products is killing it, but understanding, being able to sense what the market is doing and how the market is resonating with your web presence it's not the only window into your business, but it is a window into your business as to what the market is saying about your business overall. And it can be partially predictive of the future for you. If so if you're having your website traffic go up a lot, your bounce rate's low, people are really reading, your time on the page is long, and key products are really getting a lot of traffic and a lot of submissions, then that's predictive of good things. Versus if you're not getting that, then you want to basically track it. So again, the topic today is meaningful metrics. So understanding your traffic analysis and all those different topics. And I'm happy to have this kind of conversation with anybody, by the way, offline. But this is the type of thing you want to look for. It's not a lot of planning to just segment your content, track your content, have a submission page that's specific to each one of those, or have a submission field for each one of those. It's not a lot of work to do that, and it can really help you to segment and track your business. So I'll pass it over to Jordan for social media traffic analysis.
Yeah, real quick on website. So a lot of times whenever you're getting your bounce rates or you're getting those, some of it is just like, how he was talking about is, what pages are they coming to? But some of it is even before all that. Maybe it's the wrong customers are coming to my page. And so that's why they're immediately leaving. It has no difference what page they clicked on or what tab they clicked on. Maybe they're the wrong customers. And a lot of times the way they're getting there is through social media. And so it's how am I targeting my peeps on social media? So just like you can do some analysis through your website, there's tons of analysis that you can do through social media. Now, with Brian, Google Analytics, they do have some trial versions that's free. None of the stuff I'm talking about on social media is free. They don't do trials. They don't have them. You got to pay for it. It doesn't matter what platform, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. They're all have a cost. But I'll touch on Facebook and LinkedIn real quick. So Facebook is pretty cool. Some of the things that they have going on. You can load a couple of different topics, so text, and then you can load a couple of different images or video or something like that. And then you can give Facebook the ability to open that algorithm up and basically test pilot each one together. So say you have an A and a B text, and you have an A and a B picture or video or something that goes with it. Well, it'll test A and A together and run some analysis. It'll run B and B together. Then it'll run A and B together and B and A together. It'll tell you which one is the best, which one is performing the best. Now, again, the performance is based upon what you're seeking. Are you seeking engagements? Are you seeking likes? Are you seeking clicks? Are you seeking, and so you're having to tell all that information up front. If you don't tell it, then it's not going to do it. but there's the capabilities to do so. And so again, the end result is if you tell it, then when you're paying for this ad, not only is it going to run your ad, but it's going to pick the best algorithm for your ad to run at the best times, to put in front of the best people to get the results you want. So that's one I would suggest. If you have the means, if you have the capabilities, look into it. Again, just as Howie was talking about, happy to have an offline conversation and share as much insight as I have about any of that. LinkedIn is a lot more cumbersome, and the data is a lot different. Again, it's more business focused, and so you could actually track and dig a little bit deeper. It's a lot more cumbersome. It's more expensive.
Are there minimums on that? Like if I want to just spend like
Yep.
$250, can I do that?
Yeah, I think the minimum's $10 or $12 a day, and then
Oh, okay.
a 5,
Okay.
depending upon what day you start, it's a 5 to 7 day minimum.
Yeah, that's
And
okay.
for LinkedIn, the cumbersome is more for there's more data on an individual on LinkedIn. I think we can all assess that and understand that. So that's why it's more cumbersome, is because you have more options of who you're looking for. Whereas on Facebook, generally you're just looking at a targeted area. I want people in this geographic range. Most people don't have their titles on Facebook. They don't do that. They do go into, you can get into clicks, where they're clicking, what are they clicking on. You can follow people around on social media pretty good. That's why certain ads pop up in front of you, all over the place. So there are those ways to do it. They are really helpful, and it could be that if I'm analyzing on the front end and I'm getting the right people to go to my website, now maybe they stay longer, as opposed to just getting people to go to my website and they click off because they realize, I thought I was going to buy a cow, and Dennis is milking cows. So.
It's good. So good. I'm a big believer in this, guys, in the social media thing. You guys know I did an experiment a few weeks ago. For about 2 weeks, I threw just a lot of sweat, mainly at it, and a couple $100, and I got I think I told you guys I got 7,000. I don't know if I told this group or not, but I got like 7,000 Facebook impressions and 450 website visits, and I discovered it was kind of fun to do. It's kind of hobbyish, to be totally honest. It's more of a social media and web education time for me more than anything else. But it was really fascinating what little Jordan has more experience than I do on social media, but it was neat. I do resonate with some of what he's saying, and I will never start a business again without social media testing. Never.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Any thoughts on any of this stuff, guys? Closed sales data, leads analysis data, website traffic analysis, social media analysis. Any thoughts on that stuff?
Dustin, for the business that you want to open here in the next year or two, does any of this resonate to you on I should be doing this?
Oh yeah, especially like the pain thing. That's something that really resonates with me is financial education. That's always been a big pain
Yeah.
for me in my personal life. And the more I speak with, the more I realize that there's a need. So obviously that's something that interests me. And also I did dabble a little with analytics with YouTube. I've done a
Yeah.
little bit with that, and so that's also something interested that obviously I've got the channel. We do a little bit of work, and so I can kind of find out what people like, what when do they turn off the channel, what time,
Yeah.
what day. It's all inclusive, and so it gives you an idea of what type of business needs to be created, what kind of content. So that's obviously something that's it resonates with me a little bit.
Yeah, and so for the financial, what you're talking about, I would focus on heavily on the front end of the people with this type of issue who have this type of pain. I do really well at, and part of what we talked about in our podcast today is, you know, and I do it all the time. Somebody comes to me and says, hey Jordan, I know you. I want you to do this, this, and this. Sure, I can do it. Maybe it takes me more time. Maybe, um, their budget doesn't fit my time, and so I just refer them. Hey, you know what? This person does really great work, and they'd be a great fit for you. And it's just a filter, as opposed to somebody who's coming to you, and again, knowing your heart like I do, somebody's coming to you faith-based who just says, I've been in this situation, I'm broken, I need not only the financial assistance, but I need some of the word that you have, as opposed to somebody coming to just says, hey, I got 50 grand and I want to make it a million, fix it, here you go. You may
Right.
say, hey, I'd love to, but you're just not my customer, and you can be nice about it,
Yeah.
so. But
Cool.
Dennis, what about you, buddy?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with what you say.
Good. Yeah, and I think for Dennis's standpoint, I think, understanding when you go to the next turnaround or startup, if you have a portfolio or a set of documents that you would recommend people would look at, so for example, one of the things in my business that we do currently with my job is that we do a variety of technical analysis of people's IT infrastructure. And so with that, we know there's obviously like I said, we did a pain study. So we know what the key pains are for those customers and how prevalent each one of the pains are and that kind of thing. So with that type of data, we can create kind of like a run book or a report book. Like, hey, you should check for these 10 things every month, right? So with Dennis's expertise, he can say, hey, whether it be dairy or whether it be diamonds, we should be tracking, some of the metrics will be different, but there's also these 7 that I really want to know, right?
Yeah.
So as Dennis is trying to get the next deal, the next gig, in terms of, startup or turnaround situation or whatever it may be, or VC situation, being able to articulate, hey, from a growth, risk, and saving standpoint, which is the 3 things that we're going to talk about, not all today, but from a growth, and maybe, and by the way, Dennis, there might be a 4th topic, but we're going to at least start with finding growth with our metrics, finding risk with our metrics, and finding savings with our metrics, right? So those 3, so GRS, growth, risk, and savings. And so, are there, 5 to 7 things that you can articulate to make yourself more attractive and sell yourself and sell your service and sell your, from the next gig standpoint? Are there, as you think about it, are there, by the way, I'm not asking you on this podcast this isn't a podcast, this is a gateway group, sorry. I'm not necessarily asking you to come up with them right now. I'm just telling you that what we get out of you a lot is a lot of wisdom, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you've ever thought to write that stuff down into like a run book or a checklist for growth or a checklist for risk or a checklist for savings kind of thing. You ever thought about that?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that, but I would say that the turnarounds are like super situation specific.
Yeah.
It kind of depends on what the company does, and not just what the company does, but obviously any turnaround for the most part has to be executed with the people and kind of resources that you already have.
Okay.
So it would be kind of great to say that you have a team of kind of 5 professionals, and then you just come to the business and you just take it over. You kind of let everybody else who got the business in their situation out, and these 5 people kind of move the company forward. That's going to be great, but that's not what happens.
Yeah.
So typically,
Okay.
1, maybe 2 people with kind of this turnaround mindset come, and then first of all, you have to kind of understand where the company is, where the market is, where the kind of customers are. And second is that what human resources you have on board, and what exactly are you going to do with kind of the situation you have in hand. So it would definitely be great to put some kind of standardized checklist, but
Yep.
Maybe the standardized checklist is more on before that step and saying, somebody says, hey, Dennis, we need you to come help turn us around. Maybe you have a 4 or 5 part checklist that says, if you don't meet this checklist, maybe you're not eligible to be turned around based upon my analytics, and then once they pass that, then you target their pain. Okay, what are you actually trying to do here? Are you trying to grow? Or are you trying to make the most money? And then you're targeting from there.
Well, I would say on the checklist of the company is kind of in how should I say that we wouldn't even try to turn around is a passive executive management team, right? So if you come and interview with executive management team, and the executive management team says, well, okay, so the way it is right now is okay. Don't really want to change. This is something that can be turned around. But if you have people who are kind of willing to take something new and try it and move on, then I don't believe that there are places that just cannot be turned around, unless it's like deep into bankruptcy and kind of 3 months from closing the doors. Everything else can be turned around.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but some of it may have to be with a drastic target shift. Some of it may have to be drastically operationally adjusted.
Yeah.
But again, a lot of times, discovering that viability on the front end, when you walk in the door. I mean, that's like who, like Daniel was in the Bible, or Joseph was in the Bible. They just had this wisdom about when it came to certain circumstances. I mean, Joseph, whenever he was put in charge of the land, I mean, that's the most amount of resources that he was asked to manage. Prior to that, I mean, he was in a jail cell, just kind of managing who comes in and out, but then he goes directly up, but he has the wisdom, to say, okay, not only can I interpret the dream just because God gives me that ability, but now we got to save for 7 years and we got to divvy out for 7 years. There was a strategy, there was a plan, and it didn't come from Pharaoh's officials, it came from him. And that's really that edge that we all have, as Christ followers.
That's true. That's true.
So that's what I'm saying for you. I think number one, having multiple off side conversations with you, your intelligence is through the roof, and the willingness I know is there. And so I know that God can just give you this supernatural formula that just basically teaches you, the viability on the front end, and almost a filter of itself of, I want you to do this. Well, based on my numbers, this is what you should do. You shouldn't try to do this. You should try to do this. But that's what I'm praying for you about.
Yeah. If God gives kind of a divine wisdom what to do, and it's obvious, I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
The challenge is that it's typically not obvious, and not only that it's not obvious, it comes kind of as a big surprise to the company itself when the problem is finally discovered.
Yeah.
Because what typically happens to be one of the largest problems is you join the company and nobody even perceives it as a problem. So if you
Yep.
ask, what are you guys struggling with? It's going to take you like a couple of weeks to get to what the company really struggles with.
The person who locates the pain is valuable. The person who can clarify and say, this is your problem, that's the person that the company will always pay to fix the problem. You know, and those two examples, Daniel and Joseph, that's what they did. They identified the problem, and then what happened? The Pharaoh put them right back in charge of eliminating that problem. You know, so as we're discussing things, I mean, Dustin on the phone with people calling in, you should be identifying their pain as soon as possible. Because number one, then they'll trust you to solve it, you know, as opposed to, hey, give me your manager, give me somebody else. No, I got it because I can identify your pain, you know.
Yeah, I agree. Fully agree with that.
It's interesting. I was going to type this in, and you said it a different way. I went ahead and typed it in my way, and I probably add your way as well. It's funny that we had the same thing in our heads. What I was saying, what I was going to write down here is that if you know the question, you are 80% of the way to having the answer. Because what we find in our market, actually, the biggest amount of work is finding out what's the question. Like in IT infrastructure, you're trying to identify where the problem is, right? So identifying the question that you want to answer, or in your words, the pain,
Mm.
once you identify that, it's like, well, we can probably get another cow, or this cow's not producing. But if we don't have the metrics, if we're not tracking the right metrics, then we don't have the ability to ask those questions because we don't have the metrics as well. So it's kind of like, I don't know, it's not really on, it's kind of, it's sort of on topic, but it's a helpful thing to bring up, which is that if we know the questions, we are 80% of the way to having the answer. And Jordan's way of saying it was very complimentary. I'm going to put it down separately because there's a nuance that might be different. And I don't have time to analyze it right now. So if you know the pain, you are, I don't know how
They
you want
trust
to say it.
they trust you to solve it or alleviate
Okay,
it.
that was good. If you know the pain,
If
they
you know the
trust.
pain, you can reap the gain.
Oh my goodness.
That's right. That's right. You know what? It's actually interesting though, because if you think about it, when you go into the doctor's office, they are inheriting a halo of the title and of the office and of their education. They're inheriting a bit of a halo, right? But if you've ever walked into a doctor's office and they were like disorganized and they're kind of like an idiot, I mean, you have had situations before, or maybe they're really rude. I mean, there's different things that can make you lose confidence, but they kind of do inherit some initial confidence. But one of the things that you can sense their intelligence is if they ask questions, and if they also if they know the pain, like Jordan was saying there. So I think I do actually, I coach my sales team a lot on asking questions and in digging for pain, as well as with sort of like bringing to the customer's attention common pains they might want to think about, and they might want to consider whether or not they have those same pains. So those do, I agree with you, those do really, you do get sort of like some trust that you can solve the problem just by bringing up the pain. So I thought that was really, really good. It's
Yeah.
weird because Joseph experienced that. Like all Joseph did is bring up the pain and the insight to Pharaoh, and he literally got the job. Now I realize that God was the one that promotes people. I get it, but still circumstantially that is important to understand. He brought up the pain and he got the job, you know.
Yeah.
So Dennis can be thinking about that in terms of career navigation, not just is it possible to have some kind of a situational checklist around growth, risk, and savings, right? Because you might be able to boil a few common things down instead of having nothing. There might be a few, and then you're right. There's a lot that are situational. I totally understand, and that's where you said it's going to take some time and some research and observation. What Jordan and I call bottoms up observation or bottoms up analysis, which is basically like looking at fundamental data and letting it speak for itself, kind of thing. So yeah, I get it, but there might be still, there might still be a small checklist of common things that you want to know about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe we mean different things by saying a checklist. So typically, once you start this 10 round, the first thing you want to see is the most problematic client, kind of the biggest pain in the neck. Because once you spend maybe like a day or two of the most problematic client, and I get it, there would be like 1001 explanation why this particular client is the most problematic one. Typically, once you get to the bottom of why the most problematic client is the most problematic client, you will uncover a lot of systematic issues. It's not really kind of a checklist per se. It's not that you come and have a solution, but if you want to start looking at something, don't look at kind of high-level P&L. High-level P&L is not going to tell you anything. Find the client with the biggest number of complaints, with the most late orders, with the most money lost, like whatever metrics you choose, find the worst of the worst. And then spend a couple days figuring out why this particular one is the worst of the worst. And even though this particular client will probably be like 1% of the revenues, I can almost guarantee you it's going to be kind of a mirror of quite a few systematic problems that kind of
That's powerful.
entangle the organization.
That's powerful. Love it. Love it. And Jordan, that kind of goes into what we talk about a lot, which is feedback, Yep. Getting feedback.
Yep. Gotta have it.
So good. Because then you basically, we found it from a top down, just by getting feedback from everybody. He's kind of doing it from the bottom up and saying, just find the worst one.
Yeah.
Or find the worst three.
Yeah.
And so that's a great way of you kind of like, I think that's really, really good actually.
Yeah.
So that was powerful. Well, we don't have a lot of time left, so I do want to shift into supporting each other. I think I'll not record this. I think that's better to not record praying and sharing needs. So I'll stop that if that's good with you guys. Do you agree?
Yep.
Okay.
Sure.
Well, let's dive in, guys. It was fun talking fishing, though. And by the way, I would just say, Dustin, on that, if you can just write some instructions like, be here, bring this, because Dennis may want to come. Who knows? Who knows? Who might want to come. So, do you want to just kind of own the fishing details?
Yeah, I'll stay on top of that. I'll coordinate the fishing expedition.
Just I mean, it can be a text. It can just be like.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean,
that'll work.
Jordan and I can coordinate it, but or you can. But we mainly need to know where to go and what to bring. So.
Sure.
All right. Well, I am already recording, so that's done. Why don't we open in prayer? And we're pretty excited actually about this, and we're probably going to we might have to break this into two things actually. Dennis will love this.
Yeah.
In terms of metrics. Okay. You want to pray, Jordan?
I will.
Yeah.
God, thank you for this day. God, I thank you for the opportunity to receive from you. God, I just pray that each of the men, God, who hears this, God, live, God, or hears it after the fact, God, I just pray, Lord, that you begin to soften their heart. God, I know, God, that we acknowledge, God, that you created business. And we give you that respect. We give you that glory, and we give you that honor. We come to you seeking wisdom, and we seek boldness and insight, God, on how to implement these strategies. God, we thank you for the camaraderie. God, we thank you for the safety of each and every person and their families, God, who's listening to this. God, we just ask you to move mightily, God, and use us, God, in this time of pandemic, Lord, to be a light in our business. In Jesus' name, amen.
Okay, so I think
You need to do it.
I know we should do an intro, shouldn't we?
Yes.
Okay. How do we do that? All right, I'll just start.